Hello and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we're going to be drawing Magneto from Marvel Nemesis, because again we just can't escape this. Second last one, only one more after this, and then we're done. Finally, we can end the pain. It's all over. Please let it be soon. Let it be soon. Come on. Well, now that I've composed myself, I did finish a base sketch a while ago, naturally as per usual with these. So, funnily enough, when it came to making our Magneto, I wanted to have a pose of him with his hand out like this, but oddly enough, finding a good one of those isn't easy. What happened there? But yeah, so I just settled for generic bad guy pose of having hands behind back, and that seems to work well enough. But yeah, so there is some major discrepancies in how Magneto looks between versions, and I'll kind of discuss that a little more as we go. But we're going to be using, unfortunately, the console version of Magneto's design, which is where he's just an old man. He's just an old man. But we're going to be following a little closer to how he looks in the art, of where he doesn't have like a bowl cut like he does in the game. He's got a weird like kind of Caesar haircut in the game, but in the art he's got a bit more of like kind of slick back hair. And that looks a little bit more interesting, I find. So that's kind of what we'll be going for in terms of how he looks. But yeah, he oddly enough does not have a helmet. I can't understand why they decided to put Magneto in and not give him a helmet, because Magneto famously wears a helmet. It should be said that Magneto looks old as hell in Marvel Nemesis, which is typically not how I like Magneto to look. I typically like him to look, I don't know, maybe not exactly young, but not like he's about 1,000 years old, which is how he looks in Marvel Nemesis, which again, I'm not crazy about. I do prefer him to look a little bit more, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say here about how I prefer Magneto's age to look, but yeah, he does look quite old in Marvel Nemesis. But yeah, I suppose, yeah, I prefer the kind of more 80s, 90s kind of look for Magneto, of where he's got the kind of the long hair type of look, like he does in the cartoon, of where he's got the long hair and all that stuff. Because that's a little bit more of an interesting look for Magneto, I think. I find that just kind of him being super old is maybe not quite as interesting. Yeah, something which you might think is unintentional here, but is that Magneto has a colossal chin for whatever reason in Marvel Nemesis. He is rocking quite the jawline. For whatever reason, they decided that he has a giant chin. Naturally, we're gonna want to be kind of careful about how thick we make Magneto's hair here, because naturally, I mean, Magneto's hair is white, so it's a case of where, as we said with Storm, we're going to want to keep the lines reasonably thin on his hair. Thin and not necessarily thin, but a little more sparse than they would be otherwise. Because yeah, the thicker you make your lines, the heavier and thicker the hair will look, and the darker it will look as well. Which, yeah, we obviously want his hair to be thick, but we don't want it to seem dark, because yeah, his hair is white, and even in the lines we want that to come across. If it doesn't come across in the lines, it'll look a bit strange whenever his hair is white, in the end. But yeah. Okay, so now we're getting into the points of where this design diverges from the other designs. So yeah, this design for Magneto in Marvel Nemesis, I really don't like it. It's really uninspired. Like, I mean, a lot of the other designs are just a man or woman in just normal clothes. They're not really wearing a costume like a superhero would, or their costume is kind of terribly designed and like oddly over-sexualized or oddly just weird looking in a lot of instances. Or in the case of like Iron Man and Daredevil and Spider-Man and Venom, they look kind of right, but they've got weird things that make them just look wrong. They just have those weird little things that just make it so much stranger than it should be. And Magneto is kind of a weird combination of everything, of where he's got vague elements of Magneto. He's got red. That's about it. But so much of his design is just kind of odd, and he's not even got a helmet. Like, this is the thing. It's like with Wolverine, you can get away with putting him in normal clothes because at the end of the day, he's still gonna have the claws, so he looks like Wolverine regardless. You can get away with it in reason, but yeah, like with Magneto, it's a case of where, like, you're just kind of making it oddly difficult to tell who the hell he's supposed to be. Because if I drew out this full design and then told you to guess who it was, you probably wouldn't say it's Magneto. I don't think anybody would. Because, yeah, this design, it just doesn't look like Magneto at all. And yeah, for whatever reason, this is what they settled on for the console version. But on the PSP version, he's got a helmet, he's wearing a costume, he's buff. It's Magneto. He looks a hell of a lot more like Magneto, which again, it's kind of questionable as to why they did this for the console version. So I have to say maybe, or I have to maybe assume that maybe the PSP version was developed later. I don't know when it came out. I think it came out at the same time, so that guess may be wrong entirely. But I don't know. Maybe it was developed a little later, so they got the chance to maybe work out some of the issues, like Magneto's design. But there are some designs which are consistent across all versions, like Storm's design and Elektra's design. So, well, a lot of the female characters, those designs are consistent, so unless people may be pushed for them to remain the same or what have you, it's a case of where they didn't change. For whatever reason, those designs didn't change. And yeah, you'll notice I'm kind of very quickly blasting through a lot of Magneto here because he's just wearing clothes. He's wearing like this weird kind of tunic look, which like hangs below his crotch, so it gives him like this weird mini skirt look. And yeah, like, it just looks really weird. Like, that's really all I can say about it. He looks real weird. And yeah, I just really don't like how he looks. There's not much more I can say about it than that. I really do not like how Magneto looks in this game. So it's a case of where, yeah, I'm not really sure what a lot of the thought process was behind certain design elements or lack thereof, because I imagine with a lot of it was a case of where they wanted to freshen things up, they wanted to reinvigorate certain things, they wanted to do stuff that people hadn't done before, like take away all the design elements of a character and then try and convince you that they're still the same character. Like, yeah, I mean, this is the thing, there's a reason why certain things have always stayed the same. Like, for example, there's a reason why Magneto always has a helmet, and it's because that's how you tell he's Magneto. There's a reason why Magneto has a cape. These are all big elements of the design. I should say though, in the PSP version, he doesn't have a cape. He does have a helmet, and he's buff, and he's got a costume, but he's just not got the cape for some reason. And most of his design is purple, oddly enough. Very little red in it. But yeah, I suppose that's just like the weird little things that are different. I think Magneto is one of the characters with the fewest images on Google Images, and it's probably because he doesn't get unlocked until very late in the game. But oh, he does have buttons. I'm not going to bother drawing them on though, because they're not in the art. This like shirt thing he's wearing does have buttons, but yeah, I ain't drawing that on. It's not in the art. That's my get out of jail free card for that one. But yeah, so much of this design is just so uninspired. It's just really kind of he's just wearing clothes kind of thing. I've really talked this point to death, I think, during these drawings, but it's really something which I feel the need to emphasize, is that whenever you're designing a character, you should try and at least keep some of the bloody elements of their design. This shouldn't feel like, I don't feel like this should be like a big revelation or anything whenever it comes to redesigning a character, that, you know, you should keep some elements. You can't throw it all out, unless of course what you have is trash. Then you can kind of throw some things out. But you should keep a few elements, color schemes, stuff like that. There's no purple in here. It's just red. So it's kind of losing a lot of Magneto's design in that it's just red. And so many of the characters in this game are just red. Which is something which I'm beginning to realize now that I'm doing the art, is that so many of them are just red. Which, yeah, another really uninspired design choice. So many of the characters share the exact same color scheme. And it's just, yeah, I mean, I know I'm complaining about the same things here, and I am talking about Marvel Nemesis design, which has to be probably one of its worst elements, is its design, which oddly enough is the part that I've seen most people, like whenever I've looked on the internet for information on the game before we started playing it and before I started doing the art and all this stuff, and whenever I was coming up with the idea of doing a Let's Play and all this, the design was the element that I was seeing so many people defend. Like, so many people were defending the design of the game, and I just simply do not understand how. I don't understand really, like, what is there to like about it, because it's just so kind of boring, and nothing about it just comes across as interesting or thought out or any of it really. Like, there's no practicality to 90% of the designs. They're just clothes. Like, there's no cool elements to most of the designs because they're just clothes. And like, I mean, I'm not saying you can't do good designs which are just clothes. What I'm saying is, whenever you're drawing superheroes, or whenever you're designing superheroes, they shouldn't just be wearing clothes. They should have a, like, particularly whenever they're pre-established as having a costume, you should probably keep the costume. And again, the game is a story about superheroes fighting aliens, but yet it decided to go for this weird, creepy aesthetic, which just does not fit it at all. But again, that's an element which people, for whatever reason, I've seen tons and tons of people defending that to death, even though it's supposed to be a story about superheroes fighting aliens. Alright, there's our lines done more or less. I've just kind of ran through it as quickly as I could just to kind of get on with things. But yeah, what else we gotta do? We gotta do the dots now. Which I feel like the dots could be one of the longer parts of this one because there's a lot of folds, a lot of little areas to shade, so this could end up taking a little longer than I would like, but who knows? Who knows? It should be reasonably fast in theory, but again, most likely may end up taking a little longer than I want. So, this is the thing. We'll just get into it and see how long it takes. You know, it's funny to think of the kind of the juxtaposition of Marvel Nemesis as compared to a lot of the other Marvel stuff that was coming out soon after it. Because Marvel Nemesis came out in 2005. Only the year after that, Marvel Ultimate Alliance was released. And that game features a very comic booky art style. I say a comic booky art style. Its art style is very kind of a realisticified kind of comic booky art style. in that the designs are very much how they are in the comics. Some of them are a little different. Like, I mean, Wolverine is just wearing a bloody t-shirt, and that's his default, at least. It's his default outfit. You can choose to put him in a costume. I mean, he should be in one by default, but regardless, this is the thing. It's a case of where that game came out only 1 year after this, and it features much better design and all this. I mean, time is not exactly necessarily the thing that should determine how good a design can or cannot be. But yeah, like, I mean, it's a case of where in Marvel Nemesis you've got Iron Man in it, and he's got his kind of a more 90s design, which was out of date by the time this game came out. Which was, yeah, very kind of not how he looked in the comics. How he looked in the comics was kind of his more New Avengers look, which is what they gave him in Ultimate Alliance. And then in the film only came out in 2008, so I mean, it was only 3 years after this game. And yet, it's just got, like, the art style and everything is so much different. How all the design is so much different. I mean, even in Iron Man 1, Iron Man has a different design than how he looked in the comics at the time. It was kind of loosely based off of a few different things, so it's got little bits of certain designs, but yeah, it's not exactly just it's not his design from any one thing in particular. That's how he just looks in the movies, because that was how they usually did things at the time, of where they would usually get a design and then change it a little bit for the film. And that's how they did it in X-Men for Magneto. Magneto in those films is the character who looks most like he does in the comics. Which isn't really saying much, because I mean, all the X-Men in those films are just wearing, you know, the black outfits, which I'm not a fan of. X-Men wear yellow. X-Men wear yellow and blue. Those are their kind of colors. If X-Men have a color, it's yellow and blue. If they have a color palette. That's the kind of one that you should be going for. And any kind of variations and workarounds of that. But yeah, like, I mean, it's weird, because I mean, Magneto's design is the most similar to the comics, and it's a case where he's got the helmet, he's got cape, all this type of stuff, but there's the little things where his colors are a little bit more. I mean, I think the purple is a much more reddish purple, and it's verging on like a kind of a black color even, and then his red is very dark as well. So I mean, again, they kind of modernized and made them more contemporary and all these kind of corporate buzzwords that they always use. But yeah, like, I mean, same thing they did with Amazing Spider-Man, of where they always said, like, oh yeah, it's more contemporary, so that means that Spider-Man only comes out at night for some reason. But yeah, it's weird. It's weird the way they do these things, but yeah. Yeah, this is the last Marvel character I'm going to be drawing for Marvel Nemesis, so at least there's that, because the next character that we're going to be drawing is Paragon. I'll just say it now, because by the time that this comes out, by the time this comes out, you'll have seen, if you've been watching the Let's Play, you'll have been seeing Paragon at this point already, so I mean, it's not exactly a surprise that that's the next character to be drawing. But yeah, so this is the thing. This is the last Marvel character I'm going to be drawing, so then in the next video I'll be kind of discussing the unique designs, the new designs for the new characters in Marvel Nemesis a little bit more. But yeah, so this is the thing. This is at least the last one of where I have to talk about any garbage redesign. And in the next one I'll be talking about how all their new designs are terrible. There are a few things that we have to do. So, start with his skin tone, and Magneto is quite pale in the game. For whatever reason in the art he has stubble, which he doesn't have in the game. So I'm not really sure why they why that was kind of drawn on, because it doesn't seem really necessary at all. But yeah, he's reasonably pale in the game, so just kind of make it something a bit more like this. Bring it up a touch. And then we'll see how it looks on him. We'll probably have to change it a little bit and rework things and all that. That's usually what happens. Magneto is as pale as he is, I'll probably end up having missed some spots on him whenever it gets to the final bit. But yeah, I feel like the colour will probably be reasonably fast here because there's not much going on. It would probably behoove me actually to grab the background now, because it will just make my life a lot easier in future, so I'll do that now very quickly. Alright, we've got our background in, and naturally I did go over the lines a little bit. I had the feeling that I'd done that, so naturally I had ended up doing it, but yeah, I'll need the background on for stuff like his eyes and his hair, which are next on the agenda. So, next I'll do his eyes. Now his eyes look like they're kind of like a grey-brown color in game. In game they're definitely like a dark brown even, but in the art they're kind of a grey-brown, so I'll go with maybe like a kind of a grey, I think. A greyish color would make more sense. Makes more sense to me at least. Okay, right, so that's all that done. We got all his person bits done, so now it's all onto the rest of it. So, I think I probably mentioned this before, but a little trick that I like to use to make like silver work and look better is that I typically skew it a little bit blue. It's the same thing which I do whenever I'm doing white hair. It's that I skew it a little bit blue, unlike the blue spectrum. Like it's still up here, so it's still like white. It's just a tad towards the blue area, which means that it comes across. It stands out a little bit more from skin tones, which are usually on a redder scale. And it's the same thing with silver. You kind of want that to be a touch kind of on the bluer side, I find at least, so that it looks more metallic. So yeah, that's just like a little thing. You never really need to do it. It's just something which I think it looks better anyways. And that's all our silver. Yeah, he's not got very much of it. There's really not that much going on in terms of Magneto's colours here. So there's a dark red and then there's the main red, and that's about it. So I'll make the dark red a little bit kind of on the purplier side, just so that it stands out a touch more from the normal red, which will be kind of just more traditional red. More traditionally kind of dull red. So yeah, I'll make this kind of on a touch more on the kind of the maroon side. So I'll bring it up here about, and kind of bring it down here. And yeah, that looks about right to what it is in the game. And in the art and everything, it's kind of normally this kind of purplier style. Not even purpley, it's just kind of a touch more on the maroon side of things. Now, I feel like our purple and the shading will probably take to this okay. Because something that I was encountering in the Iron Man drawing was that whenever I was putting in the lights, like the lighter parts, I was finding that the yellow was not obviously taking to the other yellow quite that well. It looked kind of weird because it wasn't different enough from the shade of yellow that was on his armor. So I needed to. I probably could have changed it, but I didn't. No, that's just the thing. I tend to try and pick colors that will work well enough with the shading colors, because the shading colors are usually like a purple and a yellow. because those are different enough and they stand out well from most colours that aren't purple or yellow. So it's a case of where that can be a bit of an issue sometimes. Could be one which I didn't bother to remedy last time. I just couldn't be bothered, I don't think. And also that recording went on for much longer, because I mean we're only nearly, not even an hour in, and we're nearly kind of done the colours. Something which I'll do here actually is I'll probably darken this a little bit more, because I feel like it might blend a little together with the our lighter red. We don't want it to kind of look too similar, I think. Make it just a tad more red, I think. And also dull it a touch more. Just so it stands out a good bit, I think. We don't want to run the risk of it blending together. I mean, we can always change it afterwards, but I just don't want to have to do that, really. So I'd rather just have it all be right now. Yeah, now we're on to our main red, and that's the last colour, thankfully. We're making some good time, it seems. Alright, that's our colours. I feel like this red is maybe even a little too bright. I think I need to dull this one too. Which is a shame, because, you know, all the colours here are pretty dull. Something like this is a little bit more appropriate. Ugh. I mean, that certainly looks more like how he does in the game, but I don't really like it. Maybe I can get a little bit of the brightness in there. Something like that is maybe a little better, a little less kind of vibrant. You don't want to be too vibrant, because that would betray the point. That would betray the point of this making me miserable. But yes, that's our colours all done. Still under the 1 hour mark, just barely. So I suppose it's time to move on to the shading. And then we'll get a lot of the other stuff done. So bring this down 40%. And then got a few little things to do. Okay, thankfully our purple is taking to this, which is nice. It is taking to the kind of the purplier red. So that's a good thing. Thank God. Thank God I didn't have to change any colours this late in the game. Okay, there go our darks. Now we're on to the lights. And yeah, that took a little bit, but we can get on to the lights now and then. We'll be done very, very soon. Which again, we're making pretty good time for that, to be honest. Okay, there's all our shading done. So, we've got a few little things left to do. We've got to, first I'm going to make sure I grab my black, then remove the squiggle, and then we've got to draw on our signature, and then let's go very quickly do our signature. Make sure to make the brush smaller again. It's a little messy, but it'll do. And then we've got to do the light line. That's the last big thing, and then the rest is all kind of little stuff. So we'll do that, and then we'll carry on with our tiny little things after that. This shouldn't take very long, because thankfully Magneto is not shiny. despite what the game may show you. He is not actually shiny. It's just that game's bad lighting engine. Okay, there's our light line, and yeah, I made his boots a little shiny, and that's because I feel like Magneto is the type of person who'd probably keep his boots in pretty good shape. But yeah, what else do I have to do? You can turn on the texture, and then I've got to grab a gradient map. I've got to grab the ugly gradient map and see how that looks on Magneto. So we'll take it from Iron Man and drop it over on Magneto, and you know what? Naturally, it looks ugly. It really hates red, this green gradient map. So we're going to turn it off and we're going to make our new one, which means we don't need Iron Man anymore. So I keep forgetting where the gradient map area is. It's in here. So naturally, because Magneto uses a lot of red, I'm actually going to do something a little different. We're going to get a purple. We're going to use Magneto's real color palette as the gradient map color palette. So we're going to get something a little bit more purpley for our darkest color. And then we're going to get a very kind of a pale orangey red, a salmony color up here. And then in between we'll get something which is kind of a pinky red. That's not right. Not quite centered, but yeah. I feel like this needs to be a little darker. Or not even darker. It just needs to be a bit more vibrant. And then this. And then in turn be a touch paler. That should help. That looks good. So let's throw it on overlay. Pretty intense. Then soft light, which is naturally what we want. Leave it on 60%. And then there we go. That's our Magneto. And that is us. So, what have we covered? We've covered a lot about the designs. Overall, a lot of overall general stuff. We talked a little bit about Magneto specifically, and the kind of differences between his designs, because Magneto is one of those characters in this game who has a completely different design on the PSP version, and so yeah, we talked a little bit about that. We talked a little bit about how yeah, the designs are different and all that stuff, and how. And yeah, as I said, generally we talked a lot about the other designs as well, about how the kind of design sense of this game and all that stuff. We talked a little bit about the context as well, and about how the kind of designs have a habit of being kind of weird and even dated for the time. But yeah, we also talked about Magneto's old ass face. But yeah, that's kind of the bulk of what we covered. We did a little bit about the colors and stuff like that as well, naturally, but the colors were kind of a bit of a quieter part this time. Did our gradient map stuff, but yeah, we didn't have a crazy huge varied section of conversation this time, but don't really need to, don't always need to. But yeah, I think that's it. If you like the video, do what you normally do. Subscribe if you wish. And yeah, all that good stuff. But yeah, I think that's that. So I will leave you there. Bye bye.